right. I'd like to start off by saying Barak Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Rakha Kodash. Welcome to another live lesson. The name of this one is, who are the branches in Romans 11? And this is a response to Elder Pastor's video he did called the, I forget exactly what, something about Romans 11 are Israelites. I can't remember exactly how he wrote it. And then the Elder Apostle Gabar did a lesson, a response to that. And pretty much, and shalom to the Akim on the comment board, Yahweh Shem El Shai Baruch Thumb, to all the sincere, elders and brothers and sisters out there. And pretty much this is going to be a response to that, because that is a very controversial topic. We've done videos on it. I believe last week, if I'm not mistaken, Spirit had me do a video on Romans 11 on this very same topic or this same point. But, it's always good to go over it, because these are controversial points in the scriptures that are always brought up by these plantation Christians, and they think that that's a loophole for the Gentiles to come in. And one of the main ones that push that is Jake. Jake is the main ones that push the Gentiles being saved, and that's what gives vocab the energy, I guess you could say, to try and fit all nations into a covenant that was only given to Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai. I'm sorry, that was only given to the nation of Israel by Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai. All right, and this comes off of a comment that somebody named, I believe it was Michael Allen or something like that, left, where he understands that the Israelite foreigners, you have Israelite foreigners or Israelites that were being called Gentiles, but he believes that Romans 11 chapter is a way for the other nations to be brought into this, and he's wrong on that. Whether he's sincere or not, I don't know. Maybe he's sincere and he just lost right now, and maybe these lessons can help sort it out for him to where maybe he can get the information and be brought on the right path, or maybe he's filled up with pride, and believes that what he's saying is it and that's it. I don't know the man, so I don't know his intentions or his motives, or even what he teaches outside of that. All right, so what we're going to do in this lesson is we're going to go to the scripture in Romans 11. We're going to read some verses there and then jump around to other precepts, because my question to those who say that the wild olive tree in Romans 11 is talking about the actual nation, the actual Gentiles, is where in the Bible does it ever call the nations, olive trees, or just trees in general, like olive trees. There's no scripture that calls these nations an olive tree, whether it's wild or whether it's natural. Scriptures don't do that, because the only olive tree out there are the Israelites, regardless of whether they're the natural branches or the natural tree or a wild olive tree that had just grown wild. And we've gone over this many times as far as what made those Israelites wild. So let's begin in Romans 11:16. It says, for if the first fruit be holy, the lump is also holy. Why? Because Yahushai is the first fruit, and you have the tribe of Judah, which is the head tribe, and back then you had Judah, Benjamin, and Levi, right? So if the first fruits be holy, the lump is also holy, and if the root be holy, so are the branches. That's right. Now this is the point here. And if some of the branches be broken off, so the subject matter is the branches, or the Jews that were in Jerusalem were broken off. Why? Why were they broken off? Because of disbelief, right? It says, and thou, being a wild olive tree, were grafted in among them. There's a precept there. Let's see what that says. Or for them, like in other words, they came in the stead of those that were severed. And thou being a wild olive tree were grafted in among them, and with them partakest of the root and fatness of the olive tree. Boast not against the branches, but if thou boast, thou bearest not the root, but the root thee. Yeah, because Judah is the pleasant plant of the Lord. That's the main tribe, the head tribe. So you other Israelites out there that are of the different tribes, you're not the root. And even if you had Jews that were being called Gentiles that lost their way, they lost that root. So even if they were from the tribe of Judah, they lost that root. But the root still remained in Israel at this time. All right? So now, I want to look up a couple of these words here. Let's look up the word. Let's go to Romans 11, first and foremost. Let this load up. Let's go to Romans, the 11th chapter. See, and with this topic, it's hard to, you know, you could just say that's dealing with the Israelite foreigners, but in order to go into it in the scriptures, you know, you have to hit this point and that point and that point, you know, in order to really get the full understanding, because there was there's a whole lot of history that goes along with, you know, this topic and this chapter, that if you don't understand that that history, you're not going to understand the mystery, which is true. So when we look up the word, let's see, let's look up the word, some of the branches broken off, and thou being a wild, let's look up the word wild olive tree. The word wild olive tree is agrielios. If I know I'm not pronouncing it right, but I tried. It says of or belonging to the oleaster or wild olive, the oleaster wild olive tree. So it's a wild olive tree, but it's still an olive tree. Now, what made that olive tree wild? It was the impurities that entered into it. Now, the wild olive tree is a representation of the Israelite foreigners. So what were some of the impurities that entered into them to make them wild? Well, you had idolatry. You had the philosophies of the other nations, the customs of the other nations, you know? So that is what made Israel seem or become wild or become strange, you know? And they were doing certain things that when you looked at them, some of them had bald heads, some of them had no beards, some of them had high and tights, some of them had tattoos all over their body. Some of them were scantily clad, you know, just like the Romans and the Greeks before them. Some of them were homosexual. Some of them were lesbians. Some of them were into having sex with animals. You know, some of them were into eating pork, you know, which pretty much they were all eating pork. You know, some of them were into just different customs that made them unclean or made them into this wild olive tree. Now, let's just get to the points, and then Lord's will we can hit other points. We've gone over this one many times, and Elder Apostle Gabar just went over it in the lesson that he did. But let's go to Jeremiah chapter 2 and we'll start at 20. But we're gonna get some points from there. All right, so now Jeremiah 2. Just bear with me. Jeremiah 2 and verse 20, and it reads, for of old time I had broken thy yoke. And that's what the Lord telling us, how he pretty much took us out of the different captivities from among these nations, and burst thy bands, going all the way to Egypt and moving forward, and burst thy bands, and thou saidest, I will not transgress. I'm not going to break your laws anymore, Lord. Just come and help us, please. When upon every high hill and under every green tree thou wanderest playing the harlot. Why? Because we're married to Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai. So when we go outside of that, you know, if we bow down to idols or anything of that nature, or go away from this law, statutes, and commandments that the Lord gave us, then we become harlots. Just like if we have a woman and we have certain instructions that we give her and certain rules and regulations that we have amongst ourselves, and they go and break that, they become what? A harlot. Because the main act of harlotry that they commit is what? Having sex with another man. So bowing down to another idol is the same as a man having a woman and that woman laying down with another man. That's harlotry, because she's going against her husband. See? So it says, whereupon every high hill and under every green tree thy wanderers playing the harlot. Yet I have planted thee a noble vine. What is a noble vine? Well, a noble vine is an aristocratic vine. And the word aristocrat means best rule. So we were set up as an aristocratic or a noble vine, a royal priesthood, you know, given law, statutes, and commandments that separated us from the other nations and made us holy unto the Lord, separate from all these other nations, which they were never given the laws. And that's what separated us and made us holy, because the Most High, out of all the nations he created, through Abraham and Isaac and Jacob's line, set aside this holy people known as the Israelites, dear and near unto him, and gave them laws, statutes, and commandments, these rules and regulations that would keep us from the pollution of these other nations and the pollution of the idols. Okay? It says, yet I have planted thee a noble vine, holy, or right seed. Now the word holy here is W-H-O-L-L-Y, which means the whole. So the whole nation was planted a right seed, going through Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, right? It says, how then art thou turned? So let's look up the word turn, into the degenerate plant of a strange vine. So we're going to look up the word turn, degenerate, and strange. So let's look up the word turn. Let's go to Jeremiah chapter 2, which, oh damn, we were just there. Chapter 2 and verse 20. So it says, 21 actually. I have planted thee a noble vine, holy and right seed. How then art thou turned? The word turned is hapak. Hapak, to turn, overthrow, overturn. So when you overturn something, means you change it from its original way, right? Let's see, to turn, turn about, turn over, turn around, to change, transform. So the Lord planted us a holy seed. And if Lord's will, if we get a chance, we're going to go through Isaiah the 5th chapter. He planted us a holy seed. He did everything that he could, or he did everything perfect, should I say. He didn't leave anything amiss. In husbandry, there's a certain way you have to plant. There's a certain way you have to break the ground up. There's a certain way you have to care for the seed and for the plants and for the crops. So the Lord did all of that for us flawless, to where you may have a husbandman that might skip something by accident, and then his certain parts of his crop are not going to grow properly because he didn't take the proper care for it. But the Most High didn't make that mistake. The Most High set it up perfect, from the pruning to the breaking up of the ground, to the best soil, to the best seed, to the nurturing of those plants, to the watering of those plants, to the looking over it and plucking the weeds out, making sure everything was flowing and going correctly. And then eventually what happened, there were still weeds in the garden. There was still strange fruit, in the sense of, not in the sense of, Jake hanging from the trees in the south, but as far as things in the garden that didn't belong there. So they were turned, they changed from the holy to what? To the degenerate. So that's why it turned into the degenerate plant. So now let's look up the word degenerate. Degenerate plant is all one. The word is sawar. It says degenerate. turned off from what? Turned off from the holy seed that you were. Deteriorated. So when something deteriorates, means what? It falls apart. So if something that you set up is not properly cared for, what happens? It deteriorates and over time falls apart and becomes different from when you actually set it up. You see? So that's what happened to the nation of Israel. They degenerated. They deteriorated. To the what? To the strange vine unto me. So you look up the word strange and you have the word there, Nakaria, which is one of the actual words for actual heathen. So Jake actually became like the heathen. That's why sometimes when you use the word Nakar, in most cases it's talking about the other nations, but every once in a while it speaks about the Israelites. Like in the book of, what is that? Is that 1 Kings, the 8th chapter? And then I think there's one in 2 Chronicles, the 6th chapter, the prayer that King Solomon made about the strangers that are not of thy people Israel. Those are Israelites that fell away, that deteriorated, that degenerated. So over the course of time, all Israel went off. All Israel transgressed, for all have sinned and come short of the glory. So there was a way for those Israelite foreigners that fell away, that became degenerate, to come back into the fold. This is what we're reading in the book of Romans, the 11th chapter. The bringing back of those Israelite foreigners, that wild olive tree that was casted off, but by the unbelief of the ones that remained, that caused them to be severed from the actual root and the plant. Then the Israelite foreigners were given that grace to come in to that fold, to be brought into or grafted into, the actual tree that they were originally from, although they became wild. Okay? Now, that's it on that. Now, let's go from there to Jeremiah, same book, Jeremiah 11. And these are like some of two of the main scriptures that I go to. But this morning, the Spirit had me type in something into the search engine of the Bible, and I ran across this one scripture that is spectabulous. That's a combination of spectacular and fabulous. So I can't wait to read that, because it's beautiful. It even cements the truth that that wild olive tree in the book of Romans 11 is speaking about the Israelites, and the Israelites only. The problem comes with the ignorance out there, whether sincerely or not, because you have some people that are sincerely ignorant, that have no clue of what's really going on. And that's what these lessons are for, in the case that they can recover themselves from that ignorance. Because the scriptures say, convince the gainsayer. Now, a gainsayer is not a scorner or a scoffer. A gainsayer, it could be someone that's sincere, but they're just lost, and they need a little nudge here and there to get back on the right track. Now let's go to Jeremiah 11, and let's start at the 16th verse. We're going to read two verses here. It says, I feel like I'm in that Elder Malcolm spirit right now. It says, if Jeremiah 11 and 16, the Lord called thy name. Who is the Lord speaking to? He's speaking to the nation of Israel. Let's jump up to the first verse. Jeremiah 11 and 1. The word that came to Jeremiah from the Lord Yahweh Bashem Yahushai, saying, hear ye the words of this covenant, and speak unto the men of Judah and to the inhabitants of Jerusalem. So this message is to the Israelites, right? So back to the 16th verse. The Lord called thy name, you Israelites, a green olive tree, fair and of goodly fruit. So where in the scriptures does it mention the other nations being an olive tree, any type of olive tree? It doesn't. And don't say, well, Romans 11 says Gentiles and it says wild olive tree. Yeah, that's talking about the Israelites, because Everything that was written in the in the New Testament was brought from the Old Testament. That's why the Yahushua and the Apostle Paul and the rest, and Apostle Peter and the rest of them were quoting from where? From the Old Testament, as it is written somewhere in the Psalms, in the second Psalms. And Isaiah is bold in saying this, and Jeremiah, or Elias. So everything reverts back to the Old Testament. So it says, the Lord called thy name a green olive tree, fair and of goodly fruit. With the noise of a great tumult had he kindled fire upon it. Why? Because the nations came and brought us down. And the branches of it are broken. So when those Israelites that were there, which is predominantly Judah, Benjamin, and Levi, when those branches were broken off, it made room for the other Israelites that were being called strange or uncircumcised or heathen or Gentiles to be able to be brought back into the fold that they were originally from anyway, although they became wild. Right? So now what I want to do before I read on, let's go to Jeremiah 11, right? And let's go to the 16th verse, and I want to read that. What was it? Goodly, a green olive tree. All right, let's look up the word olive tree. The word olive tree is Zayath. Olive tree, olives, mountain facing Jerusalem, okay? Just olive tree. Now let's look up the word branches. The word branches is Dalayah, branch, bow of Israel, figuratively used with olive tree, vine, cedar tree. So the Israelites are the only ones that are referred to in scripture by an olive tree. You see? It's plain to see if the Spirit is working with you. And the scriptures are plain. So that olive tree there is speaking about the nation of Israel. And when Yahushua was on the scene, the predominant tribes that were there was Judah, Benjamin, and Levi. You had a sprinkle of the other nation, but mainly Judah, Benjamin, and Levi. Because by that point, the northern kingdom had already fallen to the Assyrians, and a good bulk of them, the majority of them, came over to this side of the world, as per 2nd Ezra, the 13th chapter. So there was a sprinkle of them there that went back even during the time of Rehoboam. But for the most part, the main people that were in Jerusalem at that time was Judah, Benjamin, and Levi. So there's nowhere in the scriptures where it mentions that the other nations are olive trees. And it mentions in the scriptures that the Most High planted a vineyard in Isaiah the 5th chapter. Matter of fact, let's get that before we read on in Jeremiah 11. Isaiah chapter 5, I'm going to read the first verse and let's jump down to the point. Isaiah chapter 5 and 1. Now will I sing to my well-beloved a song of my beloved touching his vineyard. My well-beloved hath a vineyard in a very fruitful hill. And you can read the rest of it, but I'm just going to jump down to the 7th verse. For the vineyard of the Lord of hosts is the house of Israel. Dig it? And the men of Judah his pleasant plant, because they are the root. They are the head tribe. That is the most pleasing tribe to the Most High, is the tribe of Judah. That's why they caught the most hell. It says, read it again. For the vineyard of the Lord of hosts is the house of Israel, and the men of Judah his pleasant plant. And he looked for judgment, but behold oppression, for righteousness, but behold a cry. So pretty much when you read from the first verse down, it tells you how carefully the Most High watched over that and groomed it and set it up and did marvelous things for that vineyard. See? So going back to Jeremiah 11, now the 17th verse. For the Lord of hosts that planted thee hath pronounced evil against thee, for the evil of the house of Israel and of the house of Judah, which they have done against themselves to provoke me to anger, and offering incense unto Baal. And that's what made Jake unnatural, wild, is the worshiping of those idols, which is a pollution, which the Lord said will become a pollution if you worship these things. So now, let's go from there. Let's go back to Romans 11, and then I got a couple other precepts. And it's, you know, this chapter is kind of hard to just make a couple of points and make a short video. Although Apostle Tahar managed to do it in a little over 7 minutes, Apostle Gabar did a little over 20 minutes. You know, I wanted to do kind of a short lesson on it, but you know, spirit is flowing, so I'm gonna flow with it, Lord's will. All right, so going back, let's read that again. Romans 11 and 16. For if the first fruit be holy, tribe of Judah, the southern kingdom, the lump is also holy, because Judah is the pleasant plant of the Lord. And if the root be holy, so are the branches, because Yahushua comes out of the tribe of Judah. And if some of the branches be broken off, in this case, the southern kingdom, and thou being a wild olive tree, because you became wild, a strange vine unto the Lord. By what? By worshiping those different idols. It tells you in the scriptures what it means. It says, and thou being a wild olive tree, were what? Were grafted in among them, and with them partakers of the root and fatness of the olive tree. So now when we look up the word grafted, let's go to Romans, the 11th chapter. Romans 11. And what verse was that? That was verse 17. And we look up the word grafted. And that's why it's important to look up some of these words. And kentrizo, to cut into for the sake of inserting a scion. S-C-I-O-N. To inoculate, engraft, graft in. So now what we have to do is look up the word scion. Oh snap. That's the, okay. Let's look up the word scion. S-C-I-O-N. And you brothers that's been in here for a while know this, but this is for the newer members that may not be privy to it. All right. Scion. Let's see what it says here. This is an offline dictionary. It says a descendant or heir. That's good. So a descendant or heir would be who? An Israelite. Heir, shoot, brood, sprout, branch, graft, progeny, junior, seed, slip, child, twig, issue, offspring, successor, heiress, begotten, chip off the old block, parent, root, source, cause. Why? Because these Israelite foreigners that were being grafted in were a part of the tree anyway, although they became wild. So they had to be cleaned up. Like, what did Yahushua say? I am the true vine, right? He said, now are you clean through the words which I have spoken. So that's what justified the Gentiles or the Israelite foreigners, was faith. You see? Because the Israelites that were in Jerusalem were trying to attain righteousness by the law. And you can't attain righteousness by the law. But just because you have faith doesn't mean you do away with the law. You still establish the law, as the scriptures say. You know? So now let's go back to Romans 11 and 17. And if some of the branches be broken off, and thou being a wild olive tree were grafted in among them, and with them partakers of the root and fatness of the olive tree, boast not against the branches, but if thou boast, thou bearest not the root, but the root thee. That's right. Because you were brought in because of their unbelief. But don't get high-minded, because they are the natural branch. They are the root. And that's what the Lord said he would save the tents of Judah first, so that the inhabitants of Jerusalem do not exalt themselves against Judah. Thou wilt say then that the branches were broken off that I might be grafted in. Well, because of unbelief they were broken off, and thou standest by faith. Be not high-minded, but fear. And this is what Paul was instilling to these Israelite foreigners. For if the Most High spared not the natural branches, take heed lest he also spare not thee. Yeah, because if they were following the laws to a certain degree, statutes, commandments, you know, and they were cut off. So if you start acting up, you could get cut off too. Behold, therefore, the goodness and severity of the Most High on them which fell, severity, because they got severed from the root. But toward thee goodness, if thou continue in his goodness, otherwise thou also shalt be cut off. Why? Because all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of the Most High. So all Israel have sinned, right? And they also, if they abide not still in unbelief, shall be grafted in, for the Most High is able to graft them in again. For if thou were cut out of the olive tree, which is wild by nature, and were grafted contrary to nature into a good olive tree, you're still a part of the olive tree, how much more shall these, which be the natural branches, be grafted into their own olive tree? For I would not, brethren, that you should be ignorant of this mystery, because this is a mystery. And that's why you have to know the history to understand this mystery. To understand that those Israelites that were being called Gentiles were the ones that fell away during the Greek Empire and even empires before that. It says, least you should be wise in your own conceit, that blindness in part is happened to Israel, meaning the Israelites that were in Jerusalem at that time, until the fullness of the Gentiles be come in, until the set number from among the Israelite foreigners be brought into the fold. And once that number is set, then that's it. Now the Lord will start to bring in the natural branches back into the order of it. So before I read this last verse, let's go to the book of Psalms. Go straight to the point. Psalms chapter 80 is only 9 verses long, but it's very, very powerful. Psalm 81. Give ear, O shepherd of Israel, thou that leadest Joseph like a flock, thou that dwellest between the cherubims, shine forth with the beginning of the nation of Israel. Before Ephraim and Benjamin and Manasseh, the Israelites, stir up thy strength and come and save us, because we need the Lord to come and save us quickly. Turn us again, O Most High, and cause thy face to shine, and we shall be saved. Why? Because we went away. So now the Lord is bringing us back. O Lord, power of hosts, how long wilt thou be angry against the prayer of thy people? Subject matter is the people of the Lord. How long is the Lord going to be mad against us? Come and deliver us, come save us. Thou feedest them with the bread of tears, and givest them tears to drink in great measure. Thou makest us a strife unto our neighbors, and the nations, we are like a strife unto the nations. It says, and our enemies laugh among themselves, yeah, because when they look at us, they take us for a joke. Turn us again, O Most High, the power of hosts, and cause thy face to shine, and we shall be saved. Thou hast brought a vine out of Egypt, which is who the nation of Israel. Thou hast cast out the heathen, and planted it. So the Most High brought a vine out of Egypt, casted out the heathen, and planted it where? In the land of Canaan. It says, thou preparest room for it before it, and didst cause it to take deep root, and fill the land. The hills were covered with the shadow of it, and the boughs thereof were like the goodly cedars. The boughs thereof were like the goodly cedars. This is a deal of a tree, vine, the nation of Israel. She sent out her boughs unto the sea, and her branches unto the river. So nowhere in the scriptures does it mention the other nation as being any type of tree, especially the olive tree. It says, why hast thou then broken down her hedges, so that all they which pass by the way do pluck her? The boar out of the wood doth waste it, and the wild beast of the field doth devour it. Return, we beseech thee, O Most High, power of hosts, look down from heaven, and behold, and visit this vine, the nation of Israel, and the vineyard which thy right hand hath planted, and the branch that thou madest strong for thyself. It is burnt with fire, it is cut down, they perish at the rebuke of thy countenance. Let thy hand be upon the man of thy right hand, upon the son of man, whom thou madest strong for thyself. So will we not go back from thee, quicken us, and we will call upon thy name. Turn us again, O Lord, power of hosts, cause thy face to shine, and we shall be saved. That's right. So nowhere in the scriptures does it refer to these nations as a tree, especially an olive tree. And the reason why that olive tree was wild was because Israel went off and became polluted with these idols. Let's go to Isaiah chapter 4, verse 2. In that day shall the branch of the Lord be beautiful and glorious, and the fruit of the earth shall be excellent and comely for them that are escaped of Israel. And it shall come to pass that he that is left in Zion and he that remaineth in Jerusalem shall be called holy, and every one that is written among the living in Jerusalem. When the Lord shall have washed away the filth of the daughters of Zion, and shall have purged the blood of Jerusalem from the midst thereof by the spirit of judgment and by the spirit of burning. And the Lord will create upon every dwelling place of Mount Zion, and upon her assemblies, and upon her assembly a cloud and smoke by day, and a shining of flaming fire by night. For upon all the glory shall be a defense, because in the kingdom of Israel will be straight. They ain't gonna have to worry anymore. And there shall be tabernacles, and there shall be a tabernacle for the shadow of the day, time from the heat, and for a place of refuge, and from the cold, from storm, and from rain. So all these scriptures we're reading is all referring to Israelites being compared to a vine, they compared to an olive tree, their poles and and the branches. So going back to Romans 11:26, after the apostle Paul said all of that, with the wild olive tree, there's a reason why he said this in the 26th verse. And so all Israel shall be saved. Why? Because once the time of the Gentiles become in, or fullness of the Gentiles become in, then all Israel will be saved, because the Lord is going to save. And so all Israel shall be saved, as it is written, there shall come out of Zion the deliverer, and shall turn away ungodliness from Jacob. So this is only dealing with the nation of Israel. This is not dealing with any other nation. So who are the branches in Romans 11? The Israelites. Whether you have the olive tree, is Judah, Benjamin, and Levi. The wild olive tree is the northern kingdom predominantly, and some of the southern kingdom that fell away during the Greek Empire and started following Hellenization. So with that, I pray brothers to edify. Next time I say, shalom.